you think there's a reason why a lot of League players, including yourself, struggle with taking accountability for their actions in game? Would you say it's more pronounced in League compared to other competitive games? Not necessarily. I think it's a very human thing to not have an easy time identifying your failings. And so you look for external reasons why you failed or why you're bad. Actually, also, it's another thing. It's like that actually, in some ways, can potentially make the game better. I'm not saying it's good to flame people or anything like that, but basically, when you play a game and it's all on you and you lose, that can be really, really, really stressful because it's all on you, right? And so, every win is, super fun, but every loss is just like, I suck, I'm terrible, I'm bad, and you can't really externalize anything. Whereas in competitive games where you have teammates, one of the things that can make those games actually less stressful to play is the fact that it is not completely on you every single time when you lose, which can make it a lot more of like, okay, well, I did that wrong, but this guy did that wrong, and so, this game wasn't as rough. And so, psychologically speaking, having teammates to offload some of your potential insights of why you're failing can make the game less stressful to play to some degree. Not that it's good to flame teammates or anything like that, but just kind of noting. Like, playing like a match of StarCraft 2, as an example, a 1v1 match of StarCraft 2, that tends to be like a lot more stressful than playing like a team game of StarCraft 2, as an example. Because in a 1v1 match, everything you're doing is on you. You have to be on top of everything. Whereas in a multiplayer match of StarCraft 2, it's like, well, my allies might be doing some things, and so it's not as just on me to succeed. Mel came out 3 weeks ago. Isn't it long enough for her ban rate to go down? So Mel's ban rate has not been trending down, which is why we're doing the adjustments we are next patch. So if you're wondering, like, why is she getting changes, it's because her ban rate hasn't been trending down. And so we do feel there's some frustration going on there, and therefore the designer of Mel, eMisery, is doing some adjustments to, tap her down in ways that hopefully lower frustration. Nerf by hotfix and still getting nerfed in patches. This feels like an unreasonable time for someone to sit at 65%. So I would disagree with you in terms of how new champions tend to go. What I mean by that is, so the statement is like, hey, a character came out and they had a high ban rate, 65% ban rate. Why don't you immediately like nerf it into the ground, right? I feel like that's like the question being asked. Maybe I'm putting too much hyperbole, but like, it's like, hey, a new character comes out, it has really high ban rate. Why are you letting it sit at that ban rate for more than a patch? Why don't you immediately nerf it into the ground, right? And the thing is first of all, we did nerf Mel when she came out. There was a hotfix, right? And something about the new patch is like players don't get to see that hotfix data until the next patch comes because it's all averaged together. But anyways, when a new character comes out, they typically have high ban rates. And so we don't really see it as a problem when a new character comes out and has a high ban rate, as long as the ban rate trends down over time. And that's not something you can really see within the first like week of a champion coming out. Because in the first week of a champion coming out, like, it's new, it's disruptive, there's all this stuff that's going on, lots of people are playing against it, seeing it everywhere. And so, in the first week or two, like, the ban rate can very well go up. And so instead, what we're looking for trends over time. And so if a new character comes out and it looks like their balance is in like a reasonable area, we tend to wait for adjusting for ban rate to see if there starts to be a downward trend. Which usually takes more than one patch to see. And that's just kind of like how most new characters happen. In Mel's case, right, we are nerfing her again this upcoming patch. And one of the reasons we're nerfing her again is that we're not seeing the ban rate trend down at this point. But that's not something we could have seen and known a week after release. That's another note in terms of how we do patches, is patches are locked a week before they come out. So as an example, the patch that's going to come out next week was locked this last week, right? And so by the time you can lock a patch, you only have about, say, a week of data to go off of from the last patch. There's like a little bit of lag there. And so within a week of a champion's release, ban rate doesn't tend to be a useful metric for if that champion is overpowered or frustrating. Just because most new champions have very high ban rates, especially in their first week as they're coming out. So instead, we look for trends. We like pay attention. We like go say, okay, here's a ban rate. Does it trend down over time? And in Mel's case, it has not been trending down, which is why we're doing the adjustments this upcoming patch. Has Riot ever considered moving stats trying to make the Zeal items rushable? It feels like Riot always has to make some weird AD carry rush item, which is eventually removed. The Zeal items like are intended not to be rushed because they're attack speed, right? And so it's a thing where it's because your attack speed on a Zeal item, like they're meant to be like multipliers on like if you already have AD. That's kind of where they fit in the scheme of things. You could make a Zeal item that's more rushable, like old versions of Static Shiv were like this, where like the Static Shiv burst damage was high enough that like you could rush it, especially on a character like Yasuo or Yone. So there might be a world where it's like, hey, is there a Zeal item that, you know, has attack speed on it that ends up being like good to rush? The hard part we've just found is like most characters don't want to rush an attack speed item because attack speed is much stronger like as a multiplier off something else. And sorry, but only attack speed item. Obviously, if it has attack speed in AD, that's a different story. But we found that when, you know, all the Zeal items had attack speed in AD, it was just kind of like this state where everything was like homogenized together and like no one really cared about attack speed. It was just like what was the better AD purchases, things like that. And so like it's been very deliberate that like attack speed AD crit items are like kind of like moved away from as like one-stop shops for everything, and instead the majority items either give you 2 of the 3 attack speed AD or crit. What's your opinion on the working environment at Riot? It depends on the team you're on. Different teams have different working environments. I would say that one of the things I really do enjoy I enjoy working at Riot is excuse me, is that the people you work directly with tend to be all really, really good at their jobs and really, really excited to make cool stuff for people who play games. At least like in the, you know, the content teams that I've worked on, like say Champion team or Summer's Rift team or the Valorant agent team, things like that. And so that's one of the things I've always really enjoyed working at Riot is I'm surrounded by a bunch of people who want to make cool stuff and are really, really good at it. So that's the part I like. Can definitely be kind of stressful though. Just always trying to get stuff out to people weighs on you a lot. And sometimes it can feel like you're working a lot. We don't have like the typical like games industry crunch thing that I've heard of in the past where it's like you're just expected to work 80-hour weeks all the time. My experience has been like the vast majority of the time it's like, hey, have a good work-life balance. So I appreciate that.